Hello, I'm Kerry. This is What This Week, and it's a slightly unexpected What This Week today because I had planned to do a kind of like reaction video to the Women's Prize announcement. Happy Women's Prize season to all who celebrate. I was going to do that in my car on my way into work this morning, but I'm not very well, so I haven't got into work this morning, and so I watched the Women's Prize long list announcement from my bed, and nobody needs to see that, so we've skipped that, and instead I will share with you what I've been reading, what I've been watching, and what I've been listening to, and any other bits that feel relevant lately. I haven't done one of these for a little while, so that feels like quite a good idea anyway. I've got Sam curled up on his bed behind me, and so if there's any kind of like rustling or heavy breathing, it's not me. Well, it might be me. There might be heavy breathing from me too. I am feeling pretty ropey. Okay, so kicking off then, in terms of some of the things that I've been reading and enjoying recently, I read My Name is Lucy Barton by Elizabeth Strout. I was given this in one of our book club's Secret Santas, and I've been intrigued about Elizabeth Strout for a while. From what I've heard about how people describe her writing, I was pretty confident I was going to like it. I picked it up this month for Kayla's Buzzword book cover reading challenge. That was to read a book with a skyline on the cover, which this has, and I really loved it. I was so right about Elizabeth Strout's writing. It was just, so emotionally intelligent. Yeah, it's really hard to kind of capture. She writes with such simplicity and yet with so much depth. Yeah, really loved this. So this is about a kind of mother-daughter relationship. The daughter is reflecting back on a time when she was in hospital very unwell, and her mother came to visit just for 5 days, and it captures a real snapshot of the context of their relationship as well as the nitty-gritty of what happens while her mum is supporting her in the hospital, and I thought it was beautiful. I'm absolutely thrilled to have started this series, and I'll certainly be reading the other books that are in this Amgash world. Elizabeth Strout's newest novel has just been longlisted for the Women's Prize. I won't be reading that, not because I don't intend to, but because I want to read all of the other books first. I'd like to read them in order, and that is not going to happen, certainly not going to happen in time for the shortlist, and very unlikely to happen before the winner is announced, but I will certainly get to it at some point. So that was a really lovely book to have read. I have also been reading and loving In My Mind's Eye, a thought diary by Jan Morris. Again, this is I've picked this up for Kayla's Buzzword book cover challenge for March. So the skyline was February's prompt, books on the cover is March's prompt. Is also Dewithon this month, which is a reading month where we read books by Welsh authors, books set in Wales, anything to do with Wales. Of which this is one. So Jan Morris is a half Welsh, half English, I think, author. She had led a really interesting life. She's a trans woman, and this is a snapshot of diary entries over the space of I think 180 something days. I don't know the significance of the time period. 188 days, and it's just delightful. So it's not stream of consciousness, because I don't like that style of writing, but she just takes a snapshot of like one thread of thought that she's had in a day and just writes, a page, a maximum of like 2 pages on that, and it's just so lovely. Some of it is mundane, and some of it is profound, and some of it is silly, but it is just really, I'm really enjoying it. She's a lovely person to be in the company of in this way, and sharing her diary in this way. She's got a really interesting use of language. I'm really loving her use of language. It's a really good time. So I'm pleasantly surprised by this. I mean, obviously I was interested in it because I bought it, but it's a bit of a shit cover and shit title, isn't it? But yeah, the contents is marvellous. I'm really pleased to be reading it, and it's a really lovely place to be spending time in amongst everything else that is going on in the world at the moment, all of the noise, all of the shit. This is a real salve. I'm really loving reading this. I sort of intended to read a few diary entries a day, so I read it across the course of the month, but I may end up reading it quicker, I don't know, we'll see. In terms of what I've been listening to, I recently finished Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. Now, I never would have said that I was a Riley Sager girly, but it was a book club pick, and so I gave it a go, and I was pleasantly surprised. So throughout I was kind of thinking, oh, this is a bit basic. It was a bit predictable and a bit unimaginative, and then you get to the end and look back and think, was that actually quite clever? I can't really tell you why I feel that way without giving spoilers, but yeah, I think I've landed that it was actually quite a clever read in the end. So I'm glad to have read a Riley Sager. That's the beauty of book clubs, right? They challenge you to pick up things that you wouldn't choose to read otherwise. Yeah, I was okay. I'm not a convert, like I'm not rushing to pick up more because that's not really my genre, but yeah, I was pleasantly surprised, shall we say. The other thing that I listened to was Fuck It, The Ultimate Spiritual Way by John C Parkin. I have had this on my shelf for, I wouldn't care to guess how many years, and again I've been prompted to pick it up by Ben Reads Good's prompts for February, which was to read a book with a flame on the cover for Flamuary, and this was the only book that I had that fit the bill. But I'm quite glad to have read it. I started off, so basically he's proposing that saying fuck it to things more, or indeed all the time, is a spiritual act and one that is very good for us. And he basically ties that into some Buddhist teachings and some kind of Chinese medicine theologies, and yeah, kind of loosely. So it's kind of about that sense of letting go, of acceptance, and not clinging on to things like emotionally or literally, and just having the freedom to be able to say, fuck it, let it be, kind of thing. I thought, for the most part, for a lot of the book, I thought this is okay. It's a bit rudimentary. I'm not learning anything new here, but it's a nice reminder of a way of thinking that I think is generally quite healthy, not to be attached to things in a very rigid way. But actually I found myself using this principle over the last few days, and thinking about it, and thinking about, like, when I've been getting like bothered about something, thinking, well, what's the fuck it option here? Yeah, okay, we'll just do that. So it's very interesting. I yeah, like I say, at first I thought it was a bit rudimentary and would be thought of it as like a really accessible way to start learning and understanding some Buddhist principles which could be applied to everyday life. But actually, you know, I've used it. I've applied it. There was one couple of paragraphs, one section where it's like saying fuck it to, what was it? Saying fuck it to caring about the world or something like that. I didn't agree with that, but that was literally a couple of paragraphs, and for the most part a lot of what he said made sense and was written in an accessible and entertaining way. So and it was a pleasant surprise. So I've been urged to pick up some real bangers from the prompts that I've been taking part in, which is great. In terms of what I've been filming, the answer is not an awful lot. I really haven't got back into my groove with YouTube yet, as you can see. I have posted a Dewithon TBR. So Dewithon is a reading challenge that takes place over the course of March, and like I said earlier, it's where you read books that have any link to Wales. Basically, it's championing Welsh literature by Welsh authors and Welsh publishers, and books set in Wales, and just spotlighting our lovely country. So yeah, I've started, as you can see, reading a couple of those. I'm also reading, or listening to at the moment, The Inverts by Crystal Jeans, and the jury is out on that so far. But yeah, Dewithon is firmly underway and my TBR is up. And I also posted my Women's Prize for Fiction wish list, which I will come back to a bit later. I'll tell you how I got on with that, because the announcement for the long list has been made this morning. In terms of what I've been watching, one thing I wanted to mention was I watched the Ruby Franke documentary on Disney Plus. It's called Devil in the Family: The Fall of Ruby Franke. I first heard about Ruby Franke fairly recently. She wasn't on my radar at all, but since she'd been disgraced, I think I'd seen her daughter interviewed on something. She has, so if you don't know the story of this, she is a vlogger, family vlogger. She was, and she had 6 children. She was part of the Mormon community, but it's emerged that she was abusive to her children, and this documentary is kind of shining a light on that. It was really, really very interesting. So there's kind of like 2 elements to the abuse of her children, and things kind of like escalated over time. The first is the whole family vlogging thing and how ethical that is. She sounds like she's pretty vile and pretty pushy about her children being in vlogs, and her husband for that matter, and they would be paid $10 for each video they were in, and the documentary does capture moments where clearly the kids weren't interested and didn't want to be part of the vlog, but were made to be, and actually told, like, if you don't feel happy, pretend. And she's all pretty vile. And when I say that kids were given like $10 pocket money for each video they featured in, she was making millions at some points. Her channel was pretty big. So there's that element, but then she teamed up with a so-called psychologist, a lady called Jodie Hildebrandt, and things spiralled into full-on child abuse until one of her children managed to escape the family home and went to a neighbour's door, emaciated and with their wrists and ankles covered in duct tape, and then the police were called and she has gone to prison. But it was very interesting. The 2 oldest children are featured in the documentary because excuse me, they're both above the age of 18, so they're featured. You know, they give their accounts, and also her husband, and I think her husband's story was the most interesting. He can clearly see, looking back, what was right and wrong about their behaviour as parents, but also is so infatuated with his wife that he still can't speak badly of her, and is still very much in love with her and still pining after the life that they had together. It's so interesting. yeah, so I would recommend watching that if that sounds of interest to you. In terms of what I've been watching on BookTube, aside from lots of women's prize content, there's 2 videos that I really enjoyed recently, and both feature tarot, interestingly. One is by Noelle 7 Pages, and that was a pick a card tarot reading with book recommendations. So she had had 3 cards. So she pulled 3 cards, and you picked which one you were interested in, skipped that part in the video, and then she would give you a reading and a book recommendation based on the card that you picked, which was really fun. The next video that I watched and really enjoyed was by Vic, and they did a tarot and bibliomancy based on the book All Fours. So they just finished All Fours, and they did a bit of bibliomancy, which I hadn't heard of before, and a tarot reading based on that book. So they turned to a random page and read a random quote and took what they wanted from that in terms of their reflections of the book, and also pulled a tarot card for all the tarot cards ask what they should take from having read that book, and I thought that was a really interesting way of reflecting on their reading and really enjoyed that. So I'll link both of those videos in the description below. In terms of what else has been going on, like I say, this morning the long list for the Women's Prize was announced, which is exciting, and I think, like most people, I have kind of mixed feelings about the list. I made a wish list video, and 5 of the books that I put on my wish list have been longlisted, which I think is pretty cool. I'm really happy with that, and so those are certainly the 5 books that I will start with, and those were Nesting, and The Persians, Good Girl, Fundamentally, and The Safe Keep. Having seen the long list, I'm also interested in Crooked Seeds. I read The Island by the same author, I think last year, and I really enjoyed it. It was a kind of quietly unsettling novel set on an island about somebody unravelling, and yeah, I really liked it. The blurb for Crooked Seeds is awful. When you read it, it's a lot of words and it doesn't really say anything, and I've switched off every time I've heard somebody talking or kind of like looking up what this book is when they've been doing their reactions to the long list videos this morning. Yeah, so I think the blurb is pretty badly written, but given that I enjoyed Karen Jennings' other book, The Island, and I think it's blurbed by another author, which I thought was intriguing. I can't remember who that is now, but yeah, there's enough there for me to be interested in Crooked Seeds too, so that's another potential. My local library has 0 of these books, none. So I found some of them on audio subscription services, and may or may not put my hand in my wallet and buy a couple. We'll see. But I'm shook to see that Passion Tide is not on there. I am shook to see that There Are Rivers in the Sky isn't on there, and other big hitters that I was expecting to see aren't. So yeah, that's a shame, but good for everybody who's been longlisted, mostly. That's it from me. I am going to find a lemsip and maybe try and get some fresh air. Isn't it nice? Like, there's finally a break in the grey, and we've had a few days, a run of some blue sky. Gosh, it does make a difference. I hope that you're all right, I hope that you are well, and I hope that you're looking after yourself, and I will see you again in the next video.